for joining us. My name is Sebastian Tremblay, and I will be your moderator. Before we begin, please note that this press conference includes simultaneous and sign language interpretation services. It is available in either full French or full English. If you are watching live, you can find our stream in each language on YouTube. Simply search our channels at City of Ottawa or Ville d'Ottawa. A note to media outlets joining us on Zoom: if you would like audio interpretation, click the interpretation globe icon in the bottom menu, then select your preferred language. You can ask your questions in the language of your choice. Today, we will be hearing remarks from Mayor Mark Sutcliffe, Wendy Stephenson, Interim City Manager, Renee Amilcar, General Manager of Transit Services, Richard Holder, Director, Engineering Services, and available to answer questions from the media, we also have Councillor Glenn Gower, Chair of the Transit Commission, Nicolas Truchon, Chief Executive Officer, Rideau Transit Group, and Enrique Martinez, General Manager, Rideau Transit Maintenance. At this time, I would like to invite Mayor Mark Sutcliffe to say a few words.
Bonjour. Merci d'être avec nous ce matin. Thank you all for joining us today. I want to start by offering my deepest and most heartfelt condolences to the family of the woman who died in a tragic accident involving an OC Transpo bus last week. Ginny and I and all of us here today and all the residents of Ottawa are keeping you in our thoughts. I want to speak directly to OC Transpo customers and Ottawa residents today. This latest shutdown of the light rail service is incredibly frustrating and unacceptable. I share your disappointment. I understand your lack of faith in the system. As passengers, taxpayers, and residents, we are all enormously frustrated with a system that has not worked as it should have. En tant que passagers, contribuables et résidents, nous sommes tous
as passengers, taxpayers, and residents, we are all extremely frustrated by a system that did not work as it should have. I assure you that I and all City and OC Transport employees will not rest until you have a safe and reliable light rail system, the system you expect, and the system we all paid for.
I assure you that I and everyone at the city and at OC Transpo will not rest until you have a safe, reliable light rail system, the system that you expect, the system that all of us paid for. When I ran for mayor last year, one of my greatest concerns was the state of our light rail system. As a radio host and columnist, I raised a lot of questions about the decisions around light rail before, during, and after it was built. And as a resident, I was incredibly frustrated with what I saw was happening. I ran because I wanted to make public transit safer and more reliable for the people of Ottawa. Je me suis présenté parce que je voulais rendre les transports en commun plus sûrs et plus fiables pour les résidents d'Ottawa.
I stood for election because I wanted a light rail to be safer and more reliable.
And I supported all of the recommendations. For the past week, along with doing many interviews with the media, I've been meeting regularly with city and transit leadership and speaking with city councillors. A number of important steps have been taken or are about to be taken that we will share with you today. After a lot of analysis and investigation, we are now moving forward based on several important principles. First, there is nothing more important than the safety of our passengers and our residents. That's why whenever there's an issue with the system, we must act with an abundance of caution. And we won't start running the trains again until we are sure that they are safe. Second, we must be transparent and share as much information as possible. Throughout the past week, there have been a number of updates and briefings shared with councillors and the public, much more communication than there was in the past. Also, I and others here today have done a number of media interviews to answer questions and share what we know during a rapidly unfolding and rapidly changing situation. In addition, starting tomorrow, OC Transpo will hold daily media briefings so that we're keeping the public informed and to answer as many of your questions as possible. À partir de demain, nous tiendrons des points de presse quotidiens.
Starting tomorrow, we will be having daily press briefings to keep the public informed and to answer the largest number of questions from the media as possible.
To implement and follow the recommendations of the public inquiry from last year. Nous continuons à mettre en œuvre et à suivre les recommandations de l'enquête
We are
publique.
continuing to implement the recommendations in last year's public.
Work collaboratively and effectively with our partners in the light rail system. I'm very encouraged to see the level of cooperation that has been happening during the past week, and that has led to a couple of important announcements we will be making today. Fourth, whenever there is an issue, we must work as quickly as possible to fix it and to restore service as quickly as possible, as long as we are able to do so safely. Renee will have more to say about our plans to resume service, possibly as early as next Monday, in a few minutes. Finally, and most importantly, it's not good enough to simply repair the problems and hope that they don't occur again. We must find the permanent solutions so these issues and interruptions stop happening and we have a consistently safe and reliable service. Nous devons trouver des solutions permanentes pour que ces événements cessent.
We must find permanent solutions so these events stop happening and we have the safe, reliable service we paid for.
Transpo, the consortium, and Alstom, the company that designed the trains, have agreed to move forward with a complete redesign of the axle system that has been at the center of many of the issues we've experienced. That alone will not solve all of our issues, but I and the team at OC Transpo are hopeful that this redesign will be a giant step forward. At last, we are working on the root problem and not just the issues that arise from it. I want to thank Renee and the team at OC Transpo, all of the people who work for our public transit system. Merci à Renee et à l'équipe d'OC Transpo, ainsi qu'à toutes les personnes.
Thank you to Renee and to everyone who's working at OC Transpo.
Is to deliver the best service possible to their neighbors, the residents of Ottawa. I also want to thank Wendy Stephenson and the team in the city manager's office for their incredibly hard work. We are taking some important steps today, but I want to emphasize, I don't expect residents to have confidence in the system just because service is restored in the next few days. A lasting trust and confidence will come only when the chronic and persistent issues we've experienced have been permanently addressed. I'm hopeful and encouraged by the fact that we are finally starting to address those issues, those fundamental issues that have been plaguing our system. These are the critical actions that we need to take in order to finally have a safe and reliable transit system. There is still a lot of work ahead of us. This is not going to happen overnight, but I'm hopeful that this is the beginning of a new period during which the recommendations of the inquiry are being closely followed. There's a high level of collaboration between OC Transpo and the consortium. There's a high level of communication with the public, and we are working toward not just temporary fixes, but permanent solutions that will deliver the light rail service Ottawa residents expect and deserve. I'll now turn things over to Wendy Stephenson.
Merci, Monsieur Ramère, and good morning, everyone. I'd like to begin by saying that my thoughts and my condolences are also with the young woman and her loved ones, the bus operator, and all of the affected passengers with respect to what happened last week. Today, I want to convey to OC Transpo customers and to the people of Ottawa that I understand what a significant impact these ongoing service disruptions have had on your lives. This is not merely a minor inconvenience. It's frustrating. It's disruptive for those who rely on our transit system for daily necessities. And I know that I speak for everyone when I say that this is not the service that the taxpayers of Ottawa have paid for or deserve. I have directed Renee and her team to work with RTG and Alstom to expedite the determination of the root cause of this recurring problem with the bearings and identify a solution to fix it permanently as soon as possible. And working with our partners, we must do what it takes to prevent this issue from reoccurring and disrupting this critical service that transit riders rely on every day. And I can assure you that Renee and her team at OC Transpo have been working around the clock with our partners to determine the root cause of this problem and resolve it once and for all. The collaboration between the city, RTG, and Alstom has improved significantly. And there is a collective appreciation for the urgency in addressing and resolving this current situation and preventing future service disruption. Challenges in this relationship were raised as a primary concern in the recent public inquiry, and I have seen firsthand the changes that have taken place in this regard. And I want to acknowledge my appreciation for those at the city and our partners for this necessary improvement. As a result of the collaboration, we now have a plan to move forward. And we also have a commitment from our partners to resolve this specific issue once and for all. Renee and Richard are going to provide more information on this momentarily. And while we have to understand the root cause and resolve this issue for the long term, we must also focus on today and minimizing the negative impacts this disruption is having on people's lives. And since the launch of our One service, OC Transpo has been listening to its riders. They have been hearing the frustrations and the suggestions for where there is room for improvement. And OC Transpo has tried to be agile, and they've made changes based on daily feedback and ideas from our riders. And from moving routes to making signage clearer, they have adjusted and communicated these changes and improvements to the public. And to our transit riders, I can assure you that you are being heard. I'd like to take a moment and I'd like to thank Renee and her team for their active communications throughout this disruption. Work will continue day and night to resume service. And whatever happens, please know that our number one priority will always be the safety of residents and our staff. And as the mayor said, we will have daily media availabilities now so that there is more information available on the situation with respect to the investigation and roadmap forward. We are committed to sharing any new information that we have with the public. I'm now going to hand it over to Renee, our General Manager of Transit Services Department. Renee.
Merci beaucoup, Wendy. Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. I would like to begin by addressing our customers. This month, it has been 21 months since I came to the city of Ottawa and started working to serve you. Before accepting the position here, I had done my homework. I knew all about the issues Ottawa had with its light rail system, and I knew the work that OC Transpo had ahead of it. These challenges are why I came here. I expected that relationship will need to be rebuilt and technical challenges would need to be solved. I came here to fix Ottawa's light rail system. Dès mes premiers jours ici avec vous à Ottawa, je vous ai dit qu'un problème technique.
From my very first days here, I said that it would take a technical solution to solve a technical problem.
Spend my time apologizing again for the service interruption, but that would just be more words. I think the residents of Ottawa have heard enough words. They are looking for action and for results. The best apology we can make to you is by fixing the system permanently and provide a consistent and reliable rail service. A service that our city can be proud of and that will bring Ottawa up to the standard of other major cities in the world. That is what my team and I have been working to achieve. It has been 8 days since we made the decision to stop rail service. It was a decision based on my technical expertise as an engineer, based on the advice of my directors, my chief safety officer, and engineers, as well as the experts at RTG and Alstom. It was a decision that we made together as a team based on solid evidence. The way the decision was made speaks to the improved relationship we have built with our partners. Over the past 8 days, we have been very busy. In a moment, Richard Holder will review the details of the test we have performed and the analysis that is taking place. Before to do so, I would like to speak to you about the return to the service plan. We are anticipating restarting gradual safe resumption of rail service 1 week from today on Monday, July 31st. In order for me to make the decision to relaunch service, I need 3 things. First, I need an inspection of all the axle bearings in our fleet. This is complete. We know that 6 will need further investigations as an abundance of caution. I would like to clarify what that means. 44 LRVs have been inspected. That means 880 hubs assembly have been inspected, which means 1,760 bearings. Second, I need the results of an analysis of the hub assembly from the manufacturer Texalis. This is expected on July 28th. Third, I need a revised safety note from Alstom and RTG. That note is in progress, and I expect to receive it by the end of this week. The drafting of the safety note is being done in cooperation between OC Transpo, Alstom, and RTG, another sign of the strong relationship we have built together. Once these 3 things are in place, gradual rail service can resume. We will provide more details on the return to service in future briefings as we get closer. In parallel, we are working to review the analysis of all the tests conducted on the line. Based on this new information, we have a firm commitment from Alstom and RTG to redesign the axles to permanently fix this issue. The redesign and retrofits to the fleet will take time, and we will have more details to share with you in the coming weeks. This is a tremendous and important step in the right direction and will allow us to fulfill our promise to you of a safe, reliable, world-class rail system. A system that our city can truly be proud of. To conclude, we will await the results of the axle bearing analysis and the revised safety note, and will keep you updated as our work progresses. Now, I would like to ask Richard Holder, Director of Transit Engineering, to review the results of the test we have conducted so far. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you, Renee. Good morning, everyone. Today, I want to provide some details of the work that has been performed and the analysis that is taking place. As Renee mentioned, the difficult decision to pause Line 1 service was made to ensure the safety of our customers and staff. Once that decision was made, the next priority was to understand the factors that led to this latest issue. We have been working together with RTG and Alstom to implement a testing program to gather data to determine a root cause. The information will also help to develop a new containment plan and inform a long-term sustainable solution. The ongoing investigation is comprehensive and can be divided into two key areas. Could we pull up the slides, please? Okay, thank you. The first key area of work involves the inspection program. Inspecting the track and trains was important to determine if this issue is related to a break or failure or poor condition of any part of the system. As you can see on the screen, in this area of work, there have been 5 elements of focus. For the pry-bar tests, as Renee has mentioned, all 44 light rail vehicles, also known as LRVs, that are in service have been inspected, and 6 LRVs need to have further investigation. 1 LRV is currently undergoing unrelated work in Kingston and will be inspected at a later date. The visual track inspections. RTG has conducted a walkthrough of the entire line on both tracks, inspecting all the track infrastructure. No issues have been identified. Rail geometry. Accurate measurements of the rail using a digital Geismar piece of equipment have been conducted during the heat of the afternoon and during the cool of the night. These tests will confirm if the track is within maintenance tolerances. Currently, the data is being analyzed to identify any inconsistent results. The restraining rail. This rail is a passive safety device and only becomes active when there is a risk of derailment. RTG has been adjusting the restraining rail to the optimal position. This work is expected to conclude by July the 30th. And finally, the axle hub assembly. The assembly that was out of tolerance has been shipped to France. The manufacturer will carefully dismantle the hub and inspect the components for any abnormal wear. We expect the results of the analysis to be completed by July the 28th. The grease from the hub has also been sent to a laboratory for further analysis. Next slide, please. The second key area of work is the instrumented bogie testing. Accelerometers and strain gauges are attached to the axles of one train to gather key data. For this area of work, there have been 3 elements. The first involved conducting multiple loading tests during the hottest parts of the day with varying loads inside the light rail vehicle at varying speeds and with the restraining rails set at different offsets. A detailed analysis of the data gathered is being conducted, but preliminary indications are that the range of loads tested would not have caused an instantaneous failure, but repetitive loading cycles may have contributed to degraded reliability. Second are the vibration sensors, known as smart bugs. They have been used on a vehicle that was coupled to the instrumented bogie test train to gather further data. Results are being analyzed now. And lastly, work is underway to determine the vibration signature of a degraded hub assembly. The instrumented bogie test train will be fitted with a hub assembly that is outside the maintenance tolerance of the current containment plan. The test train will travel the alignment at various speeds and gather valuable data to help determine the vibration signature of a degraded axle assembly. Right now, a risk assessment and test procedure are being prepared, with testing expected to take place later this week. Could we remove the slides, please? Okay, thank you. The gathering of all this information will inform a safe, progressive return to service plan and assist the final implementation of a long-term sustainable solution. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you, everyone. I will now invite each media agency to ask their questions. You may ask one question with one follow-up. We'll now start with Joe Tunney at CBC Ottawa.
Hi, can you hear me?
We sure can. Go ahead, sir.
Okay, so I want to get to that design change quickly, but before I forget it, I want to ask about compensation. Looks like it's going to be at least 2 weeks with it out of service. I'm just wondering if the city plans to reimburse or compensate paying customers in some way.
Maybe I can take that question. As I said last time, now my focus is really to bring back the service, and we need a reliable service. So we can probably talk about that later, but for now, I have to deliver a good service to the residents.
Okay. So as mentioned, I want to talk about that redesign. I guess the questions I have are just, does this apply to all trains? Do we know when it will happen? And I guess costs, just to kind of throw 3 rapid fire out there.
I would add Nicolas to answer to that question, please.
Thank you, Renee, and thank you for the question. So the decision to go ahead with the redesign of the axle has been made by the consortium, working in collaboration with Alstom. We've been working with Alstom over the past few months to develop a preliminary design, which has illustrated that the axle can be further strengthened to offset the issues that we have currently we've been having with respect to the hub assembly. In terms of timeline, we are working with the next step with Alstom to move forward with a detailed design and then a prototype over the next 12 months, but I'm waiting on the detailed schedule. We'll need to do significant testing. This is not a small undertaking. We certainly want to make sure that the new axle is going to be fit for purpose and will be effectively delivering the results that we are looking for.
And sorry, is there a cost associated?
The cost will be charged to the consortium, so they will pay everything for that.
And can I just get some of that in French? Whoever feels that they can speak to it.
Nicolas parle français. Je peux répondre que tous les frais.
Yes, I can answer that. All expenditures associated with the testing being carried on at the moment and reviewing the design of the hub is going to be covered by the consortium, by RTG, and Nicolas speaks French and he will be able to explain further. Yes, in recent months, at the same time as all the investigation work that we have carried out on the infrastructure, we have been working with Alstom on a preliminary design that would further strengthen the parts in question. A preliminary design has been submitted. The next stage is moving to the final design and subsequently to a prototype that might take 12 to 18 months. We will have to take the redesigned axle, put it through a wide range of tests before it is deployed on the line.
We will now go to Elise Skura with CBC Radio.
Thank you very much. So obviously we're interested in hearing, of course, on the axle bearing, but it doesn't solve the main issue of the long-term solution. And looking at the memo, it mentions that many of the things that have been tested haven't shown that maybe the repetitive loading cycles, that sounds kind of like a normal operation of a train to me. I wonder how that's different, and also just how close we are to actually having a long-term solution.
Maybe I can answer for the long-term solution. We just have the green light from RTG and Alstom. So they are working on a redesign. So that will bring to the final fix. In the meantime, for sure, we will need to continue to improve the current system to make sure that we can safely continue to use the LRVs as we have them now. So that's why we are having a lot of tests, and my colleague Richard Holder explained that those tests. They are very, very rigorous tests, and we will now wait for the analysis to see what else we can put in place. And maybe Richard, you can give further explanation for me, please.
Yeah, thank you, Renee. Maybe just to answer the question about the maintenance regime, it's a very good point that you raise. So this system relies on maintenance. So it's normal when we have so many vehicles running on the line day after day after day that ongoing maintenance is required. And so the purpose of the tests that we're undertaking right now is to just review the maintenance intervals, the type of maintenance work that we're undertaking. So we will be expecting to get the safety note by the end of this week, as Renee mentioned. And what we'll be expecting is that there may be some changes suggested in the overall maintenance plan for providing service on a daily basis. Whether that's changes to the inspections, changes to the replacement parts, that's still to be determined. But we are expecting there to be changes in the maintenance regime.
And if I could just jump in here,
yeah.
sorry, Elise, just to answer the first part of your question, and Richard or Renee, feel free to correct me because I'm not an engineer, but my understanding is that the long-term issues will be resolved by the axle redesign. So we are redesigning the axles so that the problems that we've experienced with the axles to date will be more with a redesigned axle. So that is the.
Sorry, Mary, you're cutting out there. But
Sorry,
Elise, you were just cutting out a little bit. Elise, did you want him to repeat that?
Yeah, I would if it's okay.
Sure.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't realize I was cutting out. So my understanding is that this redesigned axle will provide the long-term solution that you were referring to. With a newly designed axle, we will no longer have the problems that we've been experiencing so far. The issues that have caused disruptions in service will no longer happen with a newly designed axle that fulfills the objectives of the service going forward.
Okay, then so the answer to my question of how long we have to wait is 12 to 18 months for a long-term solution?
Well, we don't have the exact timeline yet. We're going to work with Alstom and with the consortium to figure out the exact timeline. I think what we're signaling is that redesigning an axle and making sure it's the axle we need going forward, the design we need, and replacing the axles on every single train, that's going to take time. So we're signaling that, but we don't have the exact timetable yet.
Thank you very much. Could you answer? Oh, sorry.
Thank you, Matt. So sorry, just to maybe just to add to what the mayor has provided there. So it's correct that the full sustainable solution will be in place when we have the redesigned axle. But there are two components to consider in this issue. So one is that there are forces that are applied to the train as it runs on the track. And so one way we can help with a progressive return to service solution is by reducing those forces. So there are changes to the track infrastructure that we can make. The other part, as has been mentioned, is the ability of the train to withstand those forces. And so the stronger that we can make the axle, the better it is able to withstand those forces. So that would be the final design solution with the upgraded axles.
Thank you very much. I wonder if we could get the answer in French as well. My apologies.
Je peux répondre. Donc, première des
Yes,
choses,
I can answer that. First of all, the redesigned axle will help us put in place a permanent solution, but that permanent solution will also be associated with work to be done on the track. We will be reviewing the track as well, and that will also contribute to a full and permanent fix.
Okay, thank you very much. I heard your answer earlier that the redesign of the axle bearing will be, the cost will be borne by RTG. I'm just wondering, in terms of the cost that we have of this shutdown and the extra service, extra drivers, all of that, who pays the cost for that, and what do we expect it to be?
Normally, with the PA that we have, we don't pay RTG when they don't deliver the service. So with this non-payment, so we can put in place the errand service. And now we are working together to get that fixed. And after that, we'll dispute those kind of things. But however, I want to assure the customers that we don't pay RTG when RTG doesn't deliver the service.
Thank you very much. Could you also say that in French? My apologies.
No worries, il n'y a pas de problème du tout. Alors, pour
Yes, of
l'instant,
course, for now, we are working as a team to restore service as quickly as possible. But when RTG can't deliver, we don't pay them. And with the money we're not paying them, we can compensate with other services.
Graham, I think you need to unmute. I think you might have dropped off. We'll come back. Let's go to Katie Griffin at CTV Ottawa.
Hi, yes, I think Graham might have popped off. So you talked about how like 1,700 bearings were checked, that you're going to design this new prototype, but that is going to take more than a year potentially, and then you have the time to test it and see how it does. What is going to be done in the meantime to mitigate these potential issues, to avoid a major interruption like what we're seeing now?
Yeah, so thank you for the question. So first, we will need to know what happened with the last hub, and that's why we are waiting from Alstom to give us a safety note to see how we can resume gradually the service. And in the meantime, as Richard said, we know that there is things that we can do with the tracks. So we'll work with our partners to make those things happen. And we will make sure after that to review maybe the safety note, because if we can reduce those forces by having more grease, it's a good example. So maybe now we can have better solutions, better data to say, okay, we can upgrade the mileage, etc. So it's just a little bit too early to conclude anything from that, but for sure we have a mitigation plan in place to be able to continue to deliver the service with this actual fleet, and in parallel, Alstom will redesign the axle.
And just clarifying, when you're talking about track changes to the track infrastructure, can you go into any details of potentially like what could happen? And is this going to be something with the gradual return to service that perhaps you're going to go slower or not have as many people on as you were alluding to?
Richard, can you answer, please?
Yeah, thank you for the question. There would be no intent to limit the passengers on the vehicles. That's not part of the plan. In terms of making changes to the infrastructure, I talked before about the restraining rails. And so the work is underway now to locate those restraining rails in their optimum position so that they still serve their purpose as a passive safety measure, but that they're providing minimal forces to the axle. So that's one important change that's happening this week, and we're expecting that work will be complete by the end of the weekend. The other element that we're looking at over the next few weeks is the installation of equipment on the wayside, so beside the track, that will apply lubrication to the top of the rails at the curves. at the tight curves. So this is not across the whole system, but we think we have 16 locations whereby the addition of grease or lubricant to the top of the rail will be able to, again, minimize the forces on the axle. So it's going to take some weeks for that initiative to actually be installed, but that's part of our progressive return to normal service. So those are two key areas. The other key area is just related to the overall gauge and condition of the track. So a few weeks ago, there was some extended maintenance that took place during the overnight maintenance period. Sections of track which had been degraded have been replaced. So overall, that helps. And moving forward, we will ensure that the kind of optimal maintenance gauge of the track is maintained. So there are some physical changes that we can make with the infrastructure in the short term, but then there will be other measures that will be more progressive.
Thank you. We will now go to Chris Curries at City News, Ottawa.
Good morning. On this design modification, we're at the early stages now, but was this issue with the axle the final straw with getting to this point, or was this prototype going to happen anyways?
Nicolas?
Thank you for the question. So obviously, as I stated in prior meetings with the media, we've taken all along a very holistic approach to the issue. So the axle redesign has always been on the table. However, the theories that we were investigating were looking for contributing factors with respect to the infrastructure, which we've now narrowed down to making interventions with respect to the restraining rail and top of rail lubrication, like Richard Holder suggested previously. But considering the situation we're in and the kind of failure that we have, we've always kept the axle redesign to progress on the preliminary design, just to not waste any time with respect to that. But we're now moving to clear instruction to proceed with the redesign and the prototyping on an accelerated basis. And this is what we've committed to the city over the last 48 hours.
And on this design modification, I'd like to know how this affects stage 2 of light rail.
Sure, all the vehicles will need to get that new axle. So we will need to replace every axle on every LRV, either for stage 1 or for stage 2.
Just want to confirm that that'll affect the north-south line as well on line 2. So would that affect any timeline?
No. For the Trillium line, it's we have diesel LRVs, and they're totally different from Confederation line.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. We will now go to Julien Paquette at Le Droit.
Bonjour. Je suis pas certain.
Hello?
Je crois que la question serait pour Monsieur Truchon, mais je vous laisse.
I think this question would be for Mr. Truchon, but I'll let you decide who can best answer. Would it be possible to explain the main differences between the current axle and what the new design will have? Are you basically designing a new axle, or are you making adjustments to existing axles? I might be able to answer that. The design of an axle is very complicated, and sometimes we are looking at tolerances in the thousandths of a centimeter. So the bearing will be reinforced so that external forces that we've been looking at for the past 2 years, we've been trying to determine where they come from. There are forces from the track, there are forces coming from the restraining rail. So what we need to have is a bearing that can respond to these extreme forces coming from the outside and remain reliable. Coming back to the root of the problem, does it seem plausible that the problem had been in place for some time?
Quelque chose qui se lousse dans le système, c'est pas nécessairement quelque chose qui se
When
produit
something
du jour au lendemain.
goes wrong with the system, that doesn't necessarily happen overnight. So are there any questions about how inspections have been carried out or how data have been analyzed? Well, the short answer is no. Because as I said, we have a large number of axles. We've always been within tolerances. This case is unique. So before we speculate, we have to wait for the manufacturer's report, which should be ready on Friday. In our previous routines, we've always been able to measure play and take action. This axle had been inspected, and we caught the problem during regular maintenance. So it does show that the maintenance systems which caught the wear are sound. And we decided, given what we found, to stop the whole fleet and go in depth.
Hi, can you hear me?
We sure can. Go ahead.
Can you tell me how firm is your commitment to getting service back online on Monday? And what, if anything, might prevent that from happening?
Thank you for the question. So first, we'll have this opportunity to speak with you daily. So we'll keep you informed. But I was very clear. I need three things, and when those three things will satisfy me, I will be able to, for sure, resume the service. But we are working around the clock, and we're doing our maximum to resume the service. But we won't put the service back if it's not safe to do so. And I have said that before. I will say it again. I want to be the first person who will go to who will take a ride in the LRT. That will mean that it's because it's safe to do so.
And a follow-up question, there's been some dissatisfaction with the R1 service. Can you tell me what, if anything, can be done to improve that for the next week?
Thank you. Again, I think also Transpo has done a lot by listening to our customers, and immediately when the customers have brought a thing to us, we were very, very creative to find solutions. I'm very glad of that. Now I'm working with my team to see if I can have more buses to continue to have, more places. I would like my customers to have a seat at least, So now by using Albert and Slater, the difference is very, very massive, which is great. And we will continue to see what we can do to improve the service, but we have to make sure as well that we continue to deliver the service around the city, not just for the air-run service.
Thank you. On va maintenant à Gaël Kanyaba avec Radio-Canada.
Oui, allô?
Bonjour.
Bonjour. Ma première question, ça serait pour Madame René Amilcar.
Madame Anyabag, Radio-Canada. You spoke about three measures that would be determining for you to bring back a service. Could you please say that again in English? Well, the first thing I would need was an inspection of all vehicles. That's been done. We found 6 vehicles that we want to look at further to make sure everything is all right. The next thing is I'm waiting for the report from Texelis, the manufacturer's report, so that they can tell us what happened with that vehicle in particular, so that we can determine if this is an isolated case or if they could be a problem with different vehicles. The third thing I need is a safety note from Alstom indicating what measures need to be put in place so that service can resume safely. Thank you. Now, if I understand correctly, among the medium and long-term solutions, you plan to redesign the axle. Is that indeed one of the measures? Yes, absolutely. I'm happy to say that Alstom and RTG have confirmed that the axle redesign will be necessary. They're starting to work on it. It is a firm commitment, and that will fix the problem once and for all. As my colleague Richard has said, we will also be working on the restraining rail, which will have to be moved slightly. And we've also seen that on curves, more lubrication is needed to reduce excessive forces on the vehicle. So we will be putting those measures in place as soon as we can. The redesign on the axle will continue, and once that is completed, we will be able to change them on every vehicle. I'd like to know whether load during Bluesfest could be a possible or probable cause. The trains were designed to deal with certain loads, and as we've seen with tests, we've seen no excessive force from that. But we're setting nothing aside. When we look at this isolated case, we're seeing no interactions, but that doesn't mean that given other external forces, there might be a relationship. What we're trying to determine is how the system works as a whole. One last question? No, sorry. We'll come back for other questions.
Hi, good morning. I guess my first question is for the mayor. You've made an effort in the past couple of weeks, especially talking about Queen Elizabeth Driveway, talking about a balanced approach to transit in the city. And you've also mentioned how with this last shutdown, customers have lost faith in the system, and rightfully so. But what do you say to the people that have no choice to take transit? What about them?
What specifically do you
Well, I
mean?
mean, you've talked a lot about how, that you want to put a emphasis on choice on how people get around, but there are people that have no choice to take transit, and they're once again sort of left out of, they have no trains to get around. Their buses aren't working as well because of R1 service, and on and on. Like, what do you say to those people?
As I said, I understand their frustration and I understand their disappointment in the system. I'm frustrated and disappointed. My family uses public transit. We've been through this for the entire existence of the light rail line. We've been right along with the users of public transit, the passengers of OC Transpo, and so we share that concern and frustration. And the only thing that we can do to fix this is number one, to repair the issues, test the trains, make sure they're safe, put in protocols, and get the service up and running again as soon as it is safe to do so. And then, and I think this is the most important part of what's being announced today, put in place the permanent fixes, the permanent solutions that will mean we will have one day a safe, reliable service where there are not issues with the axles going forward. So the work is being done to do that. It's going to take some time, unfortunately, but that's the nature of the work. And I believe that one day we will have a safe, reliable light rail service for the people of Ottawa, for the passengers of OC Transpo, for the people who rely on public transit. And this work is bringing us closer to that day.
Okay, and I have a question that I think is more on the technical side, or at least to do with service. With the way that R1 service sort of degrades bus service for the whole city because it's not really designed around buses anymore, and because the long-term fix is a year and a half away, is there any plan to improve bus service across town in the event of another failure of this kind? Because we've been sort of around this block a couple times now.
I can take that question. Definitively, we need to improve the rail service and to get that done. Okay, it's important because we cannot replace a train by buses. So our goal is really to continue to work with the consortium and to bring a reliable, safe rail.
But in the interim, if the problems aren't solved until the long-term fix is in place, how is OC Transpo going to make the bus service better in that space?
So based on my discussion with Alstom and RTG, we know that they will bring us a safety note to be able to resume the service potentially next Monday. So we will continue to improve the current system, the current fleet, to be able to resume the service. Our goal today is to resume safely the service with mitigation measures, and in parallel, we'll work on the final fix, permanent fix, as we just said, by the redesign of the axle.
Thank you. We'll now go to Shane Segang at Railfans.
Good morning. Thanks for taking our questions today. There's been a lot of discussion on the wheel-rail interface as well as the axle bearings over the past few years. Will the redesigned axle address both of these two investigations? And can you give a brief explanation of the root cause for both of these investigations that was found?
Richard?
Yeah, thank you. That's a good question. In terms of the overall root cause investigation, RTG has been working through a number of components to the root cause investigation. So the issue of the wheel rail interface has been the subject of much research and testing and investigation by NRC. So they've been reviewing the details of the wheel profile as well as the designed rail profile and the actual rail profile. And NRC has provided information and data and recommendations to RTG. RTG and Alstom are considering those recommendations so that they can make a decision about what is the optimum wheel rail profile that would form part of that sustainable solution. The other piece of work that RTG has been considering is the report that was provided by the Transportation Safety Board. So they provided a report earlier on this year into the issues leading up to the degraded axle that resulted in service being suspended a year ago. So that's a key part of the work that's underway and being considered by RTG. And then the other key component is the ongoing instrumented bogie testing. So we've been talking today about the bogie testing that has happened just in the last few days. We had a program a few weeks ago. We had a program at the end of last year as well. And so there is a lot of data that's come in from the instrumented bogie testing that is currently being analyzed and will also help inform that root cause analysis report. We are expecting to get more details of that root cause analysis within the next couple of months.
Great, thank you for that. And my follow-up is, in the interim until such time that all LRVs have been modified with the new redesigned strengthened axle, what maintenance and inspection changes will be done to limit and control the state of the LRVs to keep them in service, such as, for example, perhaps lower inspection intervals, which are currently 3,750 kilometers, continue their expanded use of smart bugs, onboard vibration detection systems, and should we expect the temporary speed restrictions on track to continue for the next year?
We'll come back to you. That's why one of the three things that I'm waiting for, it's the safety note from Alstom. So it's Alstom who is the provider of the vehicle, and Alstom will tell us what to do.
Thank
Okay.
you so much. We have some time for some additional questions, so I would invite members of the media to use the raise hand function, which you can find below as you do in Zoom, and we'll come to you in the order that your questions come up. So I'll give everyone a moment to do so, and we'll start the questions as soon as some hands have been raised. Perfect. We'll actually go to Joanne Locious at the Ottawa Citizen.
Hi, this is a crazy question, but why can we not use the trains that have been inspected and found to be sound while we were waiting the trains that that have potential problems?
Yeah, we know that we have a problem, and the play that we have with the bearing, it's a symptom. So we need to know what is the disease. So the mitigation measure that we have put in place, it was to address the symptom. And because one of the LRV has failed, so we have to, and you're right, for sure we are cautious because we don't want to take any risk. So that's why we have to continue our investigation, and we will need a safety note from Alstom to tell us how we can avoid, even if it's an isolated LRV, how we can better handle that situation.
And one follow-up question, is this the way other major metropolitan rail systems do it? If there is a problem found in an inspection with one vehicle, they all go offline?
Absolutely, and I have a lot of experience on aeronautic as well, and it's similar. We don't take any risk. When it's massive transit like that, you don't have any risk to take.
Thank you. We'll go to Joe Tunney at CBC next.
Hi there. Can you hear me still?
Sure can. Go ahead.
Very quickly. I mean, I think I heard. Basically, I'm just looking for a better understanding of exactly what this redesign may entail. I think I heard the word reinforced come up. So, knowing that I might be getting into the weeds of technical details here, any simple understanding of exactly what will happen to the wheel hub assembly?
Yes, we'll have other meeting with you, press conference, and we will have potentially will propose one just on the redesign, and I will work with Alstom to bring someone from Alstom to explain exactly what they have to do. I think it will be more accurate and more relevant, absolutely, for you.
Thank you, Joe. On va maintenant à Gaël avec Radio-Canada.
Oui, merci. Ma question, ce serait pour le maire, Mark Sutcliffe.
Gail, Radio-Canada. My question is to the mayor. Doug Ford last week praised your implementation of the recommendations in the investigation report, but said that phase 3 could not go ahead if the problems weren't fixed. Are you reacting because you fear losing your funding? Could you please repeat the last part of your question? I think there was an interruption in my signal. Thank you. I just wanted to know whether the fact that Doug Ford said without any improvement, there wouldn't be funding for phase 3. Are you confident you'll get funding? And is this why you're reacting as you did? We are asking for funding from other levels of government for phase 3. And we need to find solutions for phase 1 and phase 2 before starting phase 3. I'm not ready to use or invest taxpayers' money in phase 3 if we haven't solved the problem we have with phases 1 and 2. Once we have a safe solution, and reliable solution, we can start talking about phase 3 funding. Lise.
Elise?
Sorry about that. Yes, obviously there's a lot of efforts from city staff and engineers to look at this issue, and rightfully so. I'm just wondering if, given this emphasis, there will be any change to the timeline for the opening of stage 2.
The answer is no, because we have people who are working in parallel, and we will provide more info in September about that. But for now, we continue to move forward.
Thank you, Elise. On va maintenant à Julien Paquette avec le droit.
Julien Paquette, le droit. Thank you. If I understand correctly, a system like the light rail system needs to function with minimal impact on service. I understand that there'll be a redesigned axle coming, but it's going to take months, at least a year. Are there any short-term solutions? Would it be possible to maintain reduced service? Are there any interim solutions, in other words, to keep some level of service going when there are problems? There are two things at play here. We have a permanent solution which requires a redesigned axle, and we're going to let the engineers work on it, test it, make the parts, and then we'll exchange the parts. At the same time, with all the tests we've been doing so far over the past 2 years, we have a great deal of information. And as my colleague Richard Holder was saying, the restraining rail does exert force, which is not excessive, but just the fact that there is contact can lead to fatigue. And RTG and Alstom are working on it. The other factor is lubrication of the top of the rail. In Alstom's tests, we saw a big difference with lubrication that reduces external forces and it relieves the load on the current bearing, and that will help until we have a stronger bearing. Thank you.
And that concludes today's media availability. I want to thank everyone for joining us on this Monday morning. Have a great day, everyone.